session on the North site allocations. So we're going to move on to LNA SA1, Convoys Wharf. And so we're in the section of site allocations with planning consent. So I'm going to turn to the council first for an update on the planning status for this allocation, please.
Yes, so this is an existing site allocation which was in the core strategy 2011. It has an extant planning approval, outline planning application for the entire site of 3,500 net residential units, 47,700 square metres of gross employment floor space and 50,400 square metres of gross main town centre floor space. The site also has 3 reserved matter permissions. Technically, I think the site should probably fall under site allocations under construction because it is under construction. P22, which is the landscaped jetty and the marketing suite, which will become a cafe and restaurant, is nearing completion. The site construction road has been completed and the foundations for PO8 have been put in place. PO8 consists of 456 units, and the other reserved matter is plot 15, which is 124 affordable units. We're also in advanced pre-application discussions and stages on other plots, including plot 1, plot 12, plot 14 and 18, and also in discussion with the developer and the design team on the Olympia building, which is the central building on the site, PO7.
So that was a consent for the entire site, and it's broken into plots. Then, how many plots have we got in total?
There is 22 plots. There is a phasing plan which breaks those. I think there's 4 phases across the entire site and individual plots within that phasing. If it's helpful, we can provide the inspectors with that information.
Yes, please. That would be helpful. Where there's a phasing plan, that is useful to know which bits are which. Thank you. So does the council envisage any further applications coming forward for this site?
As I said, we're in advanced discussions on several of the other plots. Some of the other plots need to be resolved in terms of the second staircase issues, which we are engaging with the developer on. Just to clarify, there's no timeline for those remaining plots as of yet.
Preempting my questions now. So in terms of the constraints on this particular site as a whole, they've all been mitigated through the consent. Yes. And are there any viability concerns with the site so far?
There's no viability concerns as far as we're aware. As I said, the reserve matters were submitted. We believe those are viable and, as I said, they're under construction.
So in terms of the trajectory, we've got years 3 to 5, and then carrying on up to year 15, and that's on target.
Yeah, so within the 5 years, we've included the two reserved matter applications, the 456 and 124. I was just discussing with Angela, it might be we've essentially just split those, but it might be more helpful and more accurate to put in the 456 and 124 as the two plots that we envisage coming forward. And then we've simply rolled forward an assumption based on a kind of, mathematical calculation. I think it's fair to say that the plots range quite considerably in terms of their capacity. So, which is demonstrated by plot 8, which is 456 units, which will be delivered in one. It is one effectively block, compared with plot 15, which is a sort of smaller plot to the edge of the master plan, which is only 124. But for the purposes of the trajectory, we've essentially split it.
In terms of the how many outlets are there on that site, just in terms of how realistic the proposed trajectory is? So obviously there's quite a high level of delivery per annum. It's just whether that's realistic, or does that reflect the sort of higher density development and flatter development, which are more likely to come forward in a group, if you like?
Yes, that's the case. It is, quite high density, exemplified by plots PO8, which was one of the first reserve matters, which is 456 units, which will be delivered in a particular year. And as I said, we have been working at a pace in terms of the pre-application discussions on other plots with the landowner and developer, and because they're individual plots, they are running effectively the design preparation and applications in parallel in some instances as well. So I think, to the best of our knowledge, the trajectory is fair in terms of the number of units.
Okay, in terms of the modifications then, please.
Yes, thank you, Inspector Buss. That there are, again, I think in reflection of the scale of the site and the hard work that's gone on in bringing it forward, there are a number of modifications split across submitted document PD11 and the subsequent addendum submitted today. I will try and run through them in order. To kick off, if I may, within PD11, modification reference MO101 relates to paragraph 15.26, bullet point 5. It's a correction of a mistake. So deleting the words famous and replacing it with famous. Modification reference MO102 speaks to paragraph 15.26 development guidelines and inserts new text: development proposals in proximity to the safeguarded convoys wharf must take into account potential future wharf operations in accordance with the agent of change principle and London Plan Policy SI 15. Moving to the addendum submitted today, modification M0281 relates to paragraph 15.24 opportunities and deletes the words and visitor destination. So that particular sentence will now read, these will support the delivery of a new residential area. So deletion of and visitor destination that is well integrated with its surrounding neighbourhoods and communities, etc. Modification reference MO282 relates to paragraph 15.25 criterion 7. That deletes words and introduces new words in their place. That's the offending or the sentence in question will now read reinstatement of the Thames side pier with the creation of a new riverfront park, deleted words and public cultural space, replacement words cultural features, incorporating the Thames path with opportunities for waterside activities. Modification MO283 which relates to supporting text development requirements, paragraph 15.25 criterion 10, makes deletions and insertions. The sentence will now read, the design of the development must be, sorry, the suggested modification doesn't quite make sense. So the deletion should read, be demonstrably informed by and reflect the site's historical character and significance. And the insertion, so that the correct sentence should read, the design of the development must ensure the significance of the historic environment and heritage assets. Sorry, I'll read that again. My mistake. The design of the development must ensure the significance of historic environment and heritage assets is fully understood. With a few more to go, modification MO284 refers again to development guidelines, para 15.26 criterion 1, and again that deletes the words and visitor destination. So the sentence should read, development should support the creation of a new high-quality mixed-use neighbourhood that is well integrated with its surrounding neighbourhoods and communities. Modification MO285, development guidelines, again, para 15.26 criterion 1, deletes the word connect. And so the sentence, the finishing sentence should now read, new gardens, landscaping and treatment of the public realm should form a connection with the memory of John Evelyn's famous 17th century garden that once flourished on the site. And finally, modification MO286 relates to paragraph 15.26, again, criterion 8.f, deletes the sentence, or deletes the words, the grade 2 star listed St. Nicholas Church located to the south east of the site. And that's the modifications. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Anything further on site number 1? Nope. Let's move on to site number 6, Apollo Business Centre. So again, let's start with the planning status then, please.
Yes, so again, this is one of three strategic industrial locations that the plan seeks to redesignate as ELSIS with co-location in terms of providing residential uses above employment space. It is subject to planning application. I believe there is a resolution to grant on this application, and we are in the process of agreeing the section 106 for this, and the development potential reflects that. Albeit I think that might be through the modifications, if I am reading this correctly.
Yes, the housing capacity is being picked up by new modification as introduced by the addendum submitted today. And obviously you'll hear from me again on that matter. So I'm being instructed to talk you through it, if that's okay. It is modification MO 287, and that increases the net residential units from 98 to 235.
So in terms of the proportions of the site, see EB15 had envisaged the 98 units, and that presumably led to the 67% residential, or is that now the 235, including the student accommodation, means that we've got the 67% proportions between residential and employment. Have they changed from EB15?
So I think in terms of page 82 of the document that we're both referring to, I think the development potential has been superseded. So this is based on a density assumption that was applied prior to the approval of the application. So we now have obviously a resolution to grant for student accommodation plus a affordable housing block, essentially, which equates to, once you do the calculations, 235 residential units. So if I may, there needs to be, if we can get back to you in terms of the non-residential floor space, which that planning application covers.
And is that resolution to grant permission, does that cover the whole site? And have we got any phasing processes and phasing mechanisms in there?
It covers the majority of the site. I'll just, in terms of page 82 of the document that we're hopefully both looking at, there is an access road which runs alongside the arches. The arches being in active employment use. So the planning application doesn't cover that access route, but does essentially cover the rest of the site.
So will there be any need for a planning application to cover the bit that's not included within that?
No.
So in terms of the phasing, where are we sitting with the phasing on the trajectory?
In terms of the phasing of the site, it will be done as a single phase because essentially there is a ground floor mezzanine level of employment space with a podium and then two blocks, essentially one of student accommodation and one of residential. So it'll come forward as a single phase. We have staggered the delivery of those two blocks essentially. So 193 is within year 4 of the plan, and 42 is in year 5 of the plan. It's conceivable that those two, come forward together essentially.
If they come forward together, are they in the same land ownership? Yes. Do we have any start dates for construction for this one?
We don't as of yet. As I say, we are just negotiating the kind of Section 106. We don't envisage that to be a particularly complex process because there is no, strategic infrastructure requirements, etc. But there will be localized improvements and that type of thing to iron out. It's a relatively small site. It's a fairly kind of discrete sites. So we envisage that it can be fairly quick in terms of its construction.
So in terms of getting that 106 signed off, do you have any timescales of when that might be?
Sorry, I don't at the moment, but I can come back to you on that.
Thank you. Yes.
Yes, in an attempt to be helpful and circumvent my having to make note of another action, in respect of the consent on Apollo Business Centre, I'd refer the inspectors to the Bermondsey Dive Under Study, which is, I believe, exam document LC13, and it's figure 6, planning permissions for 164 stroke 196 Trundleys Road and Apollo Business Centre. That speaks to the application DC 23 130258, which was granted consent February of this year, and provides a breakdown that consent. Yeah. So in terms, I mean, it sets it out under 3 bullet points. Mixed use is the heading. The first bullet point states, in terms of flexible commercial floor space, that's use class E brackets G, 1,786 square meters. The second bullet point speaks to the purpose-built student accommodation rooms, which is at 484. And the final bullet point speaks to the 42 self-contained flats on the site.
But just to add, we will get back to you on the timescale for the signing of the Section 106.
Are there any issues with viability for this site?
No, the application was submitted with detailed viability. There's no issues as far as we're concerned.
Now, is this the site that's got an existing waste use on it? Am I correct on that one, or is it a different one?
It is, yes, and I think this was addressed. I'm looking at Carol here because it has a temporary, is that correct? A temporary license, but I'll hand over to Carol for the details.
No, not at all, David. I have the offending piece of text open right in front of me. So I'd refer the inspectors to the council's response to MIQ 18.34, and it's the council's paragraph 18.34.2, and I'll just read this out. I think it's easy enough. For clarification, the council acknowledges that the site was previously used for the processing / reclamation of waste materials. However, as set out in its other responses, I would suggest those relate to the issues around strategic industrial locations, LSIS and the GLA. However, as set out in its other responses, the council highlights that the waste uses that were present on this site were temporary, which were subject to temporary licenses for operation. This is evidenced through the Lewisham Industrial Employment Land Reports 2023 EB22 under section 3.2, which acknowledges that the waste reclamation uses were temporary and are relocating permanently to Thames Mead, which is in Bexley. Yes. This position is now understood and acknowledged by the Greater London Authority, who had originally raised this matter. Thank you.
So they're relocating. So when are they relocating? Do we know?
I don't know. We can find that out as a replacement action.
Thank you. Mr. Simon, anything else? No. That's all right. Okay, moving on to modifications, please.
Yes, thank you, inspectors. There are one or two. There is a modification under PD 11 identified at reference MO109. I would ask the inspectors to disregard that reference. I think it is a non-modification. However, the subsequent modification MO251 does seek to amend paragraph 15.51, and it speaks to providing clarification on the temporary nature of the waste facility on the site. Moving along to today's addendum, there is one further modification, that is MO287, and that is to the table, and that relates to the number of net residential units, inclusive of the calculation associated with PBSA. That there may well be further amendments to that modification to take account of the consented scheme, wider consented mixed use scheme, inclusive of the 1,786 square meters of employment floor space. Thank you.
Anything else on the Apollo Business Centre site? Okay, let's move on to SA10, Besson Street, Kenda Triangle, and the planning status and where we've got to in terms of that site, please.
Yeah, so this is a council-owned site. We entered into a joint venture with a developer on this land. The site has planning consent for a mixed-use scheme. The indicative or the capacities reflect the consented planning application of 324 net residential units and 1,064 square meters of gross town centre floor space. We are looking to proceed in terms of construction with this. There has been a slight delay since the approval, seeking to secure funding for the health centre, which is a piece of infrastructure associated with the development that has now been agreed and will be funded by SIL. So we are hoping to progress with that site ASAP. I would say that I don't believe there is an agreed timeline for the construction or to be on site as of yet.
So the housing trajectory puts it into year 4 and 5, and that's still realistic.
That's the programme, yes, that's the intention. It's a committed site and the council's home building programme fund. It has got obviously the joint venture has got now funding for the delivery of the health centre, so we're moving forward with that.
Are there any viability concerns with this site?
Not now that we have the funding agreed for the health centre.
And is that funding time limited, or is it will the construction be able to take place and everything is going to proceed, or is there a time limit on the funding for getting construction started?
No, the funding isn't time limited. It's the SIL funding and not Section 106 funding. So the funding is there, available and ready.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on to the site allocations under construction. Sorry, my apologies, missed out site 19, Creekside Village East. Final one of that group of site allocations with planning consent. So number 19.
Yes, my apologies. I was just trying to find the correct page here. Yes, so Creekside Village East, that is an existing site allocation which has been brought forward. It has got a resolution to approve on the site. There has been a significant delay in terms of trying to get over the line with the Section 106, primarily to do with the complexity of the agreement for the Section 106 and the number of parties involved, and in particular around the Trinity Laban extension. Trinity Laban is a dance school in the north of the borough, which sits immediately adjacent to the site. The site is providing a significant extension to that dance centre, and there's been negotiations through the Section 106 agreement on the exact funding mechanism packages and also fit out. I'm looking to I'm looking to Nick here. I believe we are close to signing that Section 106 agreement. It is with the Trinity Laban, and we are hopeful that that Section 106 will be agreed in weeks.
You preempted my next question. Is that days, weeks, or months?
Yeah, so we are hoping it will be weeks, yes, not months. And just in terms of the capacity obviously reflects the consent. So 393 net residential units, small proportion of employment force space, and then 7,962 square meters of town centre floor space. A large proportion of that is the extension to Trinity Laban.
And are there any particular conditions that need to be discharged?
I think I'd have to get back to you on that particular point, as I'm not aware of whether. I suspect it probably is.
And is the site in single ownership, or have we got multiple landowners involved in this site?
The site's in a single landowner.
And any viability concerns with this particular site?
No, none. I'm looking. Apologies, I haven't been directly involved in this site, but I think Nick is shaking his head.
Thank you. So no viability issues. It's been through GLA process, and it's ready to go. Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. So let's move on to the group of site allocations already under construction. We still have one participant from your tribe here. You've been very patient, waiting for this particular site to come up. So you may wish to help us with any details in terms of this is a site under construction. So in terms of the construction phasing, where have we got to with this site? I'll come to the council first, and then your tribe can chip in as necessary.
Yeah, so the site allocation covers effectively two main plots. We have Deptford Landings, MEL, and then Scott House. And Scott House is the small site to the north east of the site allocation. So in terms of the Deptford Landings MEL, this is a site that is under construction at the moment. There has been the first phase has been developed out and is occupied. We're now moving on, and the construction is taking place on plot 4, and construction will soon begin on plot 6. Those are anticipated within the first 5 years as we progress, and then there is further plots which will be developed out in accordance with the phasing plan. Again, we can provide that phasing plan to you for further detail. And then Scott House, there is an application which is a full planning consent for Scott House, but that's unlikely to be implemented. And there is a new application being submitted for student accommodation on that site. So in terms of the site's indicative capacities, I believe there is some modifications on this, simply because of the evolving nature of the applications being submitted and that type of thing. But in terms of overall, there's around about 1,940 net residential units, some of which has been delivered. So there's around about 1,700 remaining. But I think there is an update that Carol, my colleague, has.
Yes, there is. It follows the same reference number that's within PD 11, but is updated by this morning's addendum. So I would refer inspectors to modification reference MO248 in this morning's addendum, which speaks to the table on page 462 and seeks to align the site allocation with the anticipated housing trajectory. And that it does so by placing the time frame for delivery in years 1 to 5 and in years 6 to 10, and deletes the reference to further delivery in years 11 to 15. So in conclusion, delivery will take place between years 1 to 10 in total across the site. It amends the indicative development capacity So it deletes the previous anticipated capacity of 1,940 and replaces it with an indicative capacity, the number of net residential units as 1,873, with the remaining units to be delivered at 1,670.
And is delivery on schedule for this site? Is it proceeding in accordance with expectations and what's been approved?
Yes, there was a delay on this site through COVID and the year after COVID, and we're pleased to say that it is now on schedule or back on schedule, and they are romping through the construction in making good time in terms of developing the site out.
Are there any concerns that the development wouldn't come forward as envisaged?
We don't have concerns. The trajectory reflects the intelligence that we have from the case officer and from the developer. So we're confident that it will be delivered in accordance with the trajectory.
So in terms of the Scott House element, you said that there's a new application submitted. Is that is there a timescale for determination, and precisely what's that application for? I think I'll go to your tribe first for the what's it for, and then perhaps the council can tell me about the timescale. Thank you.
Thank you. So yes, a planning application was submitted earlier this year for 502 PBSA bedrooms and commercial space on the site known as Scott House, including facade retention of the Scott House locally listed building. We are in the statutory consultation period has ended for that, but we are in discussion with officers and other stakeholders in terms of resolving any minor tweaks to the application and responding to comments received from mainly the public and local residents. We have a ward member-led public meeting taking place tomorrow, after which I suspect officers will be able to advise us of a prospective committee date. We would be hopeful that it will be determined this year. In terms of what we intend to do with the site, we're confident that it can be delivered within the first 5 years, subject to obviously that committee meeting happening and agreeing a section 106 in a timely manner. We're already working on a number of construction sites for similar developments in London, so we've got a good idea of the construction programme and the deliverability of the site. So we are focusing on getting on site next year as soon as we feasibly can, and we believe there is a circa 36-month build programme for this development, which will allow it to open within the first 5 years of the plan period and be occupied.
Thank you. That's helpful. And to the council, in terms of overall timescale, is that your sort of understanding of where we're at, as far as you know?
Yes, that's my understanding. My understanding is that we'd be scheduling a committee sometime in the autumn to approve or recommend approval for that, and then we'd work obviously quite quickly in terms of the Section 106 negotiations. It's a relatively, again, contained small site. The Section 106 isn't going to be hugely complex, as is the case with some other schemes. So yes, that reflects our understanding as well.
Thank you very much. So in terms of any modifications for this particular allocation, site number 2?
That there are two, in document order, within PD 11, modification reference MO 104 seeks to amend the supporting text paragraph 15.34 development guidelines to include a new subparagraph. The new text reads development proposals in proximity to the safeguarded Convoys Wharf, which is, I'll use that terrible term, adjacent to this site, must take into account potential future wharf operations in accordance with the Agent of Change principle and London Plan Policy SI 15. The other modification we have already spoken about, and that is the modification reference number MO 248, and it is as further amended by this morning's addendum, and speaks to the indicative development capacity and the number of net units yet to be delivered. Thank you.
Anything else on site number 2? Okay. Right, let's move on to site number 5. And that's Surrey Canal Road and Trundleys Road. So, under construction, in terms of the what are the construction phasing, and are there any changes? Is it on track?
Yeah, so just in terms of this site, the site is actually in 2 separate ownerships. So Trundleys Road, which is effectively the eastern section of the site, is in a single ownership and is under construction. There was a pause in the construction due to the contractor going bust. However, there is a new contractor on board, and construction is well underway again, which is fantastic. So in terms of the development potential on the site, the development potential reflects the Trundleys Road element of that site, which is 274 net residential units and 2,890 square meters of gross employment floor space, which is a net increase of employment floor space. We do anticipate it being constructed. It is on track now, and we do anticipate that being constructed and delivered in the next couple of years. It is one of the 3 sites that is allocated, or sorry, designated strategic industrial land, which we are seeking to de-designate as ELSIS, and for employment-led mixed-use redevelopment with residential above. Carol?
My apologies, inspectors, and my apologies, David. There is a main modification being introduced as per the addendum that's relevant to the numbers. So it's in terms of time that is modification reference MO 250, and that seeks to compress the delivery time frame. So I believe this is on the back of the statement of common ground. It will be delivered in years 1 to 5. And the indicative development capacity is at 219, not 274. I'm assuming that this reflects the implementation of the granted consent.
If I may, can I ask that we go away and check those figures? And the reason I'm hesitating there is that the site allocation is 2 separate land parcels, one which is under construction and one which is effectively hasn't got a planning application covering it, which is owned by the council, which is the northern section called Juno Way. And I just want to be absolutely sure that the site allocation is covering both the Trundleys portion and the Juno Way portion. So that will include the planning permission and the scheme that's being built out, plus an indicative capacity for the Juno Way site.
Thank you. I think that would be helpful if we could understand what's actually consented, what's remaining, and if the figures are all correct. Because again, the question is it still an employment-led site? And once you've worked those numbers out, then that will hopefully give us the answer to that question. Are there any viability concerns with this particular site?
No viability concerns now. Obviously, contractor, obviously went bust, but we're back on track with the Trundleys Road site.
You refer to the site being in 2 parcels and the Trundleys Road element having planning permission. What about the council's part of that site? How does the council envisage that coming forward, the remainder of the site?
Yeah, so the council site does not have planning consent. As part of the Trundleys Road consent, there was a wider master plan that was developed in partnership with the council, but there is no planning consent yet for the Juno Way, which is why I think we just need to reflect on the figures to ensure that within the 5-year land supply, we have the Trundleys Road component and then the council component of the site, which is a smaller element, will be later on in the trajectory in the plan period.
Yeah, because looking at the trajectory, there's 219, isn't there? 28, 29. So there may be a balance beyond that period which isn't reflected in the trajectory.
That's correct. My understanding, and forgive me reacting to this, but the 219 units reflects the permission on Trundleys. So my hunch is that there needs to be some additional capacity within later in the plan to reflect Juno Way's capacity.
It all helps with the housing figures, doesn't it?
Anything further on this particular site? No? Thank you. Let's move on to site number 16. So land north of Reginald Road and south of Frankham Street. And in terms of what's left on this site for construction?
So the site is obviously under construction. It is a multi-blocked construction. I believe some of the blocks are occupied, and all of the blocks are under construction. So we effectively have the 119 net residential units within the 5-year land supply. Just confirming with Angela there, in terms of the front block onto Reginald Road, we understand that it is very nearly completed in terms of being occupied, but we haven't counted that within our completions or AMR as of yet. So it might be that we just confirm whether that front block onto Reginald Road, where that block is. But the rest of the plots are under construction and will be completed imminently.
So in terms of the proportion that's left to be completed, when I saw it, it looked very much well on its way towards the end, and the landscape area and the public realm was establishing itself. So in terms of what's left to do on the site, and if you want to have a look into the completion so far, that would be helpful for the housing numbers session.
Yep, we will do that, yes.
Do we have any modifications for site 16?
I don't believe so, but I will just double check. There are no modifications.
For that. If there's nothing else for site 16, let's move on to site 17. This is Lower Creek side. So I think I understand that this one's got, it's partly consented, and which bits have been consented and which bits are outstanding, and how we're progressing towards applications for the remainder.
Yeah, so there's effectively four land ownerships within the overall site allocation. We have one creekside, which is effectively being built, which is immediately adjacent to Deptford Church Street. We then have 5 to 9 Creekside, which is the largest proportion of land to the east of the site allocation, immediately adjacent to Creekside, which has permission. I think it's resolution to grant, subject to Section 106 agreement. That is for commercial space with student accommodation. We then have 2 Creekside, which is the south side, including the Bird's Nest pub, which we are at advanced pre-application stage with the developer on that one, and looking for a planning application imminently, more likely probably autumn time for the submission of that application. And then the final plot is a small Art Deco building in the centre of the site, and we are in discussion with the applicant, but you know, a fairly early stage in the pre-application process.
So in terms of pulling this site together, how is that to be coordinated? Because I know there have been some representations from current occupiers of Lower Creekside in terms of operational concerns that they have, and how does that fit into the overall process of getting the whole allocation delivered?
Yeah, so when we were looking at the site, and I think it's fair to say that 1 Creekside and 5 to 9 Creekside were further advanced than the Art Deco building on the north side of the creek. There was a wider master plan which was essentially prepared in collaboration, and that's formed the kind of basic principle or framework. The site itself is fairly fairly well defined by existing roads, railway infrastructure, etc. It's not an overly large site, and therefore it isn't terribly complex in terms of the master plan design principles, albeit there are existing occupiers on the site, which we are encouraging the landowners to retain and relocate wherever possible. So we have the application coming, or the application that's been resolution to grant for 5 to 9 Creekside, and again we're working with the 2 Creekside, the Bird's Nest pub and site along there to re-provide the employment space and maximise the amount of employment space on those sites to ensure that there is suitable employment in accordance with the ELSIS designation.
And are there any changes to this particular allocation? I think I noted that the indicative site residential capacity's gone up on this site from 162 to 210.
Yeah, yes, there are modifications. They're set out under modification reference MO256, which is referenced in PD11, but the detail is provided in the addendum submitted today. So modification MO256 brings forward or confirms the time frame for delivery as years 1 to 5 and identifies net residential units as 209, deletes the previous figure of 162, and identifies that the remaining net units to be delivered are 153. There are also 2 further modifications.
Let's have the further modifications then, please.
So in PD11, modification reference MO257 speaks to supporting text paragraph 15101 and amends the wording of criterion 8. I believe it introduces criterion 8, if I'm reading this correctly, in full. So 8 will read delivery of new and improved public realm and open space in accordance with a site-wide public realm strategy, being mindful not to compromise the established boating community, including A, waterside access and amenity space with provision of a new public path along Deptford Creek linking to Waterlink Way. B, widened pavements at pinch points in Creekside. C, the creation of new yards behind the street frontage. And D, better interconnectivity with Deptford High Street through a green corridor. The final modification is again referring back to the addendums submitted this morning, referenced modification MO307, and that's to paragraph 15.97, and it essentially reflects existing planning consent. So it provides reference to the planning consent, which is DC 23 131085. And it states, it describes the consent, demolition of existing buildings and redevelopment of the site for a building comprising flexible employment floor space, brackets, use class E, brackets G, close brackets, and purpose-built student accommodation, bed spaces, brackets, use class sui generis, close brackets, with access and highway works, amenity spaces and cycle parking and associated works at 5 to 9 Creekside SE8.
Thank you. So just in terms of the numbers, there's been a revision to the residential proportions. So I know Artworks Creekside were concerned about the proportions of the mix on site in their representations. So in terms of the change so far, how does that sit in percentage of employment floor space and floor space for residential units?
Apologies, is the question about net non-residential floor space?
Yes, it is. In terms of the context being the Artworks Creekside, their concerns about the proportions of the assumptions of 33% employment floor space, 67% residential uses, and in their representation they're talking about the ratio of the sites, and it's not been reflected in the allocation. So I'm just trying to explore with you in terms of the revised residential numbers, where have we got to with the proportions of the percentages of the mix on the site?
Yes, I understand. Essentially, the increase in residential units is a result of the student accommodation and the ratio and the density of those student accommodation. In terms of the gross employment floor space, where we've still got that as kind of indicative 8,201 square meters, which is a net increase. As I said, where effectively the site itself is effectively covered by disparate employment uses, and we're essentially saying that all ground floor uses has to be, have to be employment uses. So, and in some cases there is mezzanine level or first floor level employment spaces, as in One Creekside. So we are anticipating, albeit we still are negotiating on Two Creekside and the Art Deco building, we are expecting a net increase in the employment floor space overall within the site.
If I may very briefly, and without wishing to sort of retread ground, I think this site in particular is a good example of where the council is seeking to imply that sort of approach of industrial intensification, specifically through the opportunities provided by use class E brackets G. I will stretch my neck out and say brackets 2 and 3 as well, specifically, to secure that sort of industrial intensification that comes with those servicing the service uses that David and I have been frequently referring to. Again, I'll stick my neck out and say that the initial signs on in terms of schemes that are already delivering at this location are good. I believe I may have referenced the industrial scale bakery as an example of that. So the council is taking that approach that's been advocated to us by the GLA very seriously through the decision-taking process.
I think we'll take a short comfort break at this point, and it's 18 minutes past 3. So if we come back at 3:35, and then we'll be looking at the final 5 sites. We're adjourned until then. Right, welcome back. We will move on to site LNA SA4 Neptune Wharf. So to the council, in terms of the construction phasing and whether the site is on track to deliver, please.
Yeah, so the entirety of the site is almost complete, and we anticipate that being complete this year, 24-25.
In terms of, are there any modifications to this site?
Yes, there is a single modification. It's a very straightforward one, identified under modification reference MO108, and it deletes the word yes from the time frame reference years 11 to 15. So reinforcing that delivery will take place in years 1 to 5.
Thank you. So we'll move on to site number 7, Silwood Street. I think we've made reference to Silwood Street previously, haven't we? So in terms of the construction phasing, and are there any changes to this site that are expected?
No changes to the site. The site is well underway in terms of its construction, and we're anticipating it to be complete in year 2 of the plan.
And there are no concerns that the development wouldn't be completed as envisaged with that one?
No, it's as I say, it's well underway, and there was a suggestion that it might be complete this year, but we've taken a more cautious approach, having went to see the site.
Thank you. Any modifications?
There are no modifications.
Thank you. Let's move on to site number 14. So this one looked substantially completed when I saw it in May. So is this on track?
Yes, this site is complete, and I believe it's occupied as well.
Okay, let's turn over to the final 2 sites. We're almost at the end of this agenda. So remaining 2 sites. Firstly, SA12. If the council could just update us on the position with this particular site, I'd be grateful.
Yeah, so this is an existing site allocation within the site allocations local plan. It did have an approval which is subsequently lapsed for the site. When we were preparing the new cross area framework, which covers this site, we were engaging with the landowner. It's in a single land ownership. We were engaging with the landowner to bring forward development on this site. The development potential reflects the design-led approach in the New Cross Gate area framework. Unfortunately, since our discussions prior to 2021, I think it was, and despite our best efforts, we haven't rekindled discussions with the landowner. I think the landowner is certainly keen to have it as a site allocation, and the council, given its strategic position within New Cross Gate, is keen for it to be developed because it is quite a key site within the New Cross town centre. So we will endeavour to try to continue to engage with the landowner and hopefully bring forward a scheme on the site. I think the trajectory reflects the fact that whilst we have had historic kind of engagement with the landowner, we haven't initiated any kind of pre-application discussions with him recently.
Just as a very brief footnote to add a little colour to what David has said, I did meet with the landowner following the submission of the new local plan for examination. He did come in with his son, and I would just reinforce they asserted to me that they remain interested in developing the site. I've got really not very much more to add to that, but they are interested in the outcomes of this process, and they expressed as David explained, they expressed their desire for their site to remain allocated.
So from their perspective, they're just keen on an allocation, but they weren't offering you any insight into what they were thinking in terms of developing the site.
No,
and
I've got nothing really further substantive to add to what David said in terms of the trajectory. It is purely that I can confirm that they remain interested.
And that interest is based on the submission version of the plan, the allocation as proposed.
Yes, that's correct. Yes.
Does the council have any viability concerns, or are there any constraints that would need to be overcome for this particular site?
When we were looking at the site in terms of the New Cross Gate area framework and the pre-application discussions that we had, there was no major concerns in terms of constraints on the site. No real concerns in terms of significant infrastructure constraints either. Obviously, this is a site adjacent to the New Cross Gate retail park, but won't be directly impacted on any kind of safeguarding direction, etc.
Do we have any modifications for this one?
There are no modifications.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on to the final site, number 13. So Achilles Street. Is this a council-led scheme, or what's the ownership situation?
Yes, the majority of the land is owned by the council. There is a small portion of site to the west of the site allocation, which is currently under construction for 64 student beds, which is a sort of collection of 3 sites on the western edge. But the remaining part of the site is a council-led estate regeneration scheme.
And in terms of the physical site constraints on this particular site, when I saw it, there's going to be lots of different buildings, lots of different uses. How's that going to be brought together?
Yeah, so we're in advanced pre-application stage for the estate regeneration scheme. We're anticipating a submission of the application in September. There is a detailed phasing and decant strategy which has accompanied that, or will accompany that. Essentially, the first phase, which is a 15-story block on the northeast corner of the site, will occupy what is currently a garage site, and that will be the mechanism then to enable the decant and phasing process of the estate regen scheme. As I said, the planning application is due to be submitted in September this year.
So in terms of, so it's majority owned, the small portion to the west that wasn't. Have you got leaseholders in that site, in the council owned portion?
I think we'll have to come back to you on that one. I don't know the details on that. And just to say that there has been in line with the London plan already a resident ballot for estate regeneration as per the London plan policy, and that was a positive ballot in terms of the residents voting for redevelopment of the estate.
And in terms of viability, what sort of work has been done on the viability for this allocation?
Yeah, so there has been detailed work on the viability. It is subject to grant funding, and there will be a split of affordable housing and private sale. I think at the moment it's looking at 50% affordable housing on the site to 50% private. But again, I'll get back to you on the exact detail of that, and that is kind of shifting prior to the submission of the application.
So in terms of the indicative capacity, what have you based that on? Is that based on mathematical work, or is that the latest position of the pre-application as it was at the time when you were writing this?
Yes, that is correct. As of the time we were writing this, that was the correct position. What I'd like to do is take that away and make sure that that is the absolute up-to-date position that we are submitting on, if I may. I don't think it'll change too much, but I just want to obviously reflect the most up-to-date position.
That would be helpful. Thank you. So, any modifications for site number 13, please?
Yes, there is a single modification. It's contained in PD11 and also repeated, but perhaps with clearer detail in the addendum today. It is reference modification MO253, and it relates to the time frame of delivery, and it clearly shows that delivery will take place across years 1 to 15. In accordance of what we've discussed just now.
Right, okay, thank you. So are there any final points for the site allocations from the north area that the council wishes to make?
Sorry, can I just check on the trajectory for that site? There seems to be a random 21 dwellings, 36, 37. What was the rationale for that? It's obviously quite a large break. Is that a particular portion of the site, or does it reflect the estate redevelopment?
Yeah, so there is a small portion of land to the south, which is called Dean House, which is currently being leased to Goldsmiths for student accommodation. So that is when we were master planning as a council, the entire site has been incorporated within the figures, but that will not be in the planning application submitted in September. So yeah, that 21, I appreciate, does look like an anomaly, but it's just a portion of the site which won't be delivered as part of the planning application.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your participation in this session, and to obviously everyone who's participated throughout the day, and anyone who's still watching online. We've now reached the end of matter 18 on the north allocation, so we'll now adjourn. It's 15:56, and we will adjourn until 9:30 tomorrow morning, and we will start matter 20. Thank you very much.